Chapter 2. Miss Bianca. It was the most exquisite residence Bernard had ever seen, or indeed could ever have imagined. Its smooth, gleaming walls were beautifully painted with all sorts of small flowers, violets, primroses, and lilies of the valley, and the roof rose in tier upon tier of curly, gilded eaves, from each corner of which hung a golden bell. Round about was a pleasure ground, rather like a big bird cage, fenced and roofed with golden wires, and fitted with swings, seesaws, and other means of gentle relaxation. Bernard's eyes felt as big as his ears as he diffidently approached, and he himself felt a very rough, plain mouse indeed. "Miss Bianca," he called softly. From inside the pagoda came the faintest of rustling sounds, like silk sheets being pulled over someone's head, but nobody appeared. "Don't be afraid, Miss Bianca," called Bernard. "I'm not burglars. I am Bernard from the pantry with a most important message." He waited again. One of the golden bells, as though a moth had flown past, tinkled faintly. Then again there was a rustling, and at last Miss Bianca came out. Her loveliness took Bernard's breath away. She was very small, but with a perfect figure, and her sleek, silvery white coat had all the rich softness of ermine. But her chief point of beauty was her eyes. The eyes of most white mice are pink. Miss Bianca's were deep brown. In conjunction with her snowy head, they gave her the appearance of a powdered beauty of the court of Louis XV. Round her neck, she wore a very fine silver chain. Bernard took 2 steps back, then 1 forward, and politely pulled his whiskers. "Are you calling?" asked Miss Bianca in a very low, sweet voice. "Well, I was," began Bernard. "How very nice!" exclaimed Miss Bianca. "If you wouldn't mind swinging on the bell pull, the gate will open. Are there any ladies with you?" Bernard muttered something about Madame Chairwoman, but too hoarsely to be understood. Not that it mattered. Miss Bianca's beautiful manners smoothed all social embarrassments. As soon as he was inside, she began to show him round, naming every painted flower on the porcelain walls, and inviting him to try for himself each swing and seesaw. "Pretty, isn't it?" she said modestly. "Though nothing, I believe, compared with Versailles. Would you care to see the fountain?" Bernard nodded dumbly. As yet, he hadn't even noticed the fountain. It was in fact a staggering 6 inches high, made of pink and green Venetian glass. Miss Bianca sat down on a hidden spring, and at once a jet of water shot up out of the pink rosette on top. "There is a way of making it stay," she explained, "but I'm afraid I know nothing about machinery." She rose, and the jet subsided. Bernard would have liked to have a go himself, but he was only too conscious that time was passing, and that as yet his message was undelivered. Indeed, it was hard to know where to begin. It was such a jump from Venetian glass fountains to the Prisoners' Aid Society. Moreover, though he no longer thought Miss Bianca affected, in fact he liked her very much, he couldn't for the life of him see her doing anything more strenuous than swinging on a gilt swing. And the turn the conversation next took fairly curled his whiskers. I see you've been decorated," said Miss Bianca politely. She was naturally familiar with medals and orders and ribbons. "May I ask, what is it for?" "Gallantry in face of cats," muttered Bernard. First to his chagrin, then to his astonishment, she burst into musical laughter. "In face of cats? How very droll! I dote on cats," laughed Miss Bianca. "Or rather," she added sentimentally, "on one particular cat, a most beautiful Persian, white as I am myself, belonging to the boy's mother." "I used to play in his fur. I'm told we made rather a pretty picture. Alas, he is no more," sighed Miss Bianca. "But for his sake, all cats will ever be dear to me." Bernard was absolutely speechless. He didn't disbelieve Miss Bianca. He could just imagine some pampered lab cat fat enough and drowsy enough to have lost all natural instincts. But what an appalling thought! A mouse going out into the world alone on a mission of danger, not afraid of cats. "My poor playfellow! Ah, me!" sighed Miss Bianca tenderly. "Look here, you've got to promise," began Bernard, and gave up. There was a dreamy look in her eyes which warned him, though he didn't know much about women, that it was the wrong moment to run cats down. Instead, he attempted to console her. You've got all this, he pointed out, looking around at the swings and the seesaws and the fountain. And what trifling it seems, sighed Miss Bianca. What trifling it must seem, especially to you, compared with the real and earnest life of a pantry. Bernard drew a deep breath. Now or never. Now or never, he thought. Would you like to do something real and earnest too, Miss Bianca? She hesitated. Her lovely eyes were for a moment veiled. Then one small pink hand crept up to finger the silver chain. No, said Miss Bianca decidedly. I'm so fond, you see, of the boy, and he is so attached to me. How many times have I not heard him call me his only friend? I feel so long as I do my duty to the boy, my existence, however frivolous it may appear, is in fact quite earnest enough. That's one way of looking at it, said Bernard glumly. They should have said Madam Chairwoman, he thought, not him. Madam Chairwoman could talk about duty quite wonderfully. All the same, he persisted, you're not with the boy all the time. You're not with him now, for instance. There was considerable point in this. It is at night that mice most want to be up and doing, and are most bored by inactivity. Actually, now that you've no longer your, playfellow, I really don't see how you occupy yourself. Well, as a matter of fact, said Miss Bianca modestly, I write. Bernard gaped. He had never met a writer before. Though he was terribly afraid of wasting time, he couldn't help asking what. Poetry, confessed Miss Bianca. How Bernard's heart leaped, for so was the Norwegian prisoner of poets. What a wonderful, fortunate coincidence, the very thing to make Miss Bianca change her mind. Without giving himself time to think, and without any transition, Bernard blurted it all out. All about the Prisoners' Aid Society, all about the great enterprise, all about Miss Bianca's part in it, all about everything. The result was exactly what might have been expected. Miss Bianca fainted clean away. 2. Desperately, Bernard slapped her hands, fanned her face, leaped to the hidden spring, turned on the fountain, with incredible agility, leaped again and caught a drop of water before it subsided, sprinkled Miss Bianca's forehead. Oh, for Madam Chairwoman, he thought. Seconds passed, a long minute before the dark eyelashes fluttered and Miss Bianca came to. Where am I? She murmured faintly. Here, in your own porcelain pagoda, reassured Bernard. I am Bernard from the pantry. Go away, shrieked Miss Bianca. If you'll only listen quietly, I won't hear any more, cried Miss Bianca. I don't want anything to do with you. Go away, go away, go away. Greatly daring, Bernard caught both her hands and pressed them between his own. The action seemed to steady her. She stopped trembling. Dearest Miss Bianca, said Bernard fervently, if I could take your place, do you think I wouldn't? To spare you the least inconvenience, I'd walk into cat baskets. But I can't travel by diplomatic bag. I can't get to Norway in 24 hours. Nor can anyone else. You, and you alone, can be this poor chap's savior. At least she was listening. And at least she didn't push Bernard away. She even left her hands in his. And a poet, went on Bernard. Only consider, dear Miss Bianca, a poet like yourself. How can you bear to think of him, alone in a deep, dark dungeon, when one word from you— Is that really all? Whispered Miss Bianca. Just one word? Well, of course you've got to say it to the right mouse, admitted Bernard honestly. And to find him, I dare say— You'll have to go into pretty rough quarters. I tell you, my blood boils when I think of it. Why? Whispered Miss Bianca. Why does your blood boil? Because you're so beautiful, cried Bernard recklessly. It's not fair to ask you to be brave as well. You should be protected and cherished and loved and honored, and I for my part ask nothing better than to lie down and let you walk on me. Miss Bianca rested her head lightly against his shoulder. You give me such a good opinion of myself, she said softly. Perhaps I could be brave as well. Poem by Miss Bianca written that night. Though timid beats the female heart, tempered by only Cupid's fires, the touch of of a heroic hand with unaccustomed bravery inspires. MB.